calls. But we're going to speak to Representative Brad Sherman, a Democrat of California. He's on the Foreign Affairs Committee and also ranking member of the Financial Services Subcommittee on Capital Markets. Congressman Sherman, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you again.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what happened at that closed-door meeting of the Democratic caucus and what you guys discussed?
Well, we were absolutely united that one individual showed himself to be totally unfit to be president during that debate, and that was Donald Trump. He lied 30 times. He has proposed rounding up 10 millions, perhaps 10 million people who live in our society, putting them into deportation camps. This is a man who shouldn't be president. We then also focused on what's the best way to make sure that Donald Trump isn't president. And there was a range of those who thought, as some of your callers have, that Joe Biden performed well in the debate and in general, and would be a very strong nominee. Over to the other side of people thinking that the delegates should go in another direction. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's press conference to see whether Biden is able to erase and displace from our minds what we saw at the debate on June 26th and 27th. And we'll see how long that press conference is, because we know that on September 10th, there's going to be another debate. And that'll be after our convention. And I think all the delegates at that convention are going to feel confident that when Biden faces Trump again for 90 minutes, live, unedited, and when he faces him, that he will do a good job and put this whole debate thing to rest. I think that the delegates need reassurance, and whether it's this press conference or something else that comes up in the next week or so, I think Biden will show us that he can do 90 minutes at 9 p.m. live, and then do it again on September 10th after the convention.
Congressman, I just want to read what you posted on X. You said this: Biden did a very good job in the 22-minute interview with Stephanopoulos, but most of the questions were about Biden's capabilities. We need an extended live interview that focuses on where Biden plans to lead us over the next 4 years. As I said, speaking of the debate, Biden had a bad night. Trump has led a bad life. This an extended live interview. What are you recommending?
Well, this press conference may be exactly what I was recommending. Tough questions on national and international policy, live broadcast.
So sir, are you
close.
totally in on Joe Biden? Do you think that there's another Democrat that could do better against former President Trump?
As Biden himself has said, we may have 50 Democrats who could beat Donald Trump, but Biden is our nominee. If he can erase or displace from our minds the performance in the first debate. And one way to do that is to perform well in the press conference he's got tomorrow. I don't know if that's a 10-minute press conference or a 90-minute press conference, but the closer it comes to showing us what he'll be able to do in the September 10th debate, the better I'll feel. But it's quite possible that exactly what I was asking for, or something very close to what I was asking for in that tweet, will be provided tomorrow.
Do you think that President Biden should take a cognitive test or hand over any medical records, as some Republicans are calling for?
I think he's handled a whole lot of records. Donald Trump, on the other hand, he gets some doctor who wants an appointment from him, who's a true believer, a Trumpster, to write a letter saying that the man's in great health, just a one-sentence letter. I think that a cognitive test strikes me, at least to some, as demeaning for a president. And if the president thinks that, I wouldn't find him wrong in his decision. I think the best cognitive test is stand up for an extended period of time, live, to tough questions about our nation. And we may see that tomorrow.
I want to turn to foreign policy, since you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee and the NATO summit is happening here in D.C. this week. The New York Times is reporting that Russia is unlikely to take any more Ukrainian territory. What does that mean for U.S. policy going forward, given that it looks like this war is at a standstill?
Well, I know Ukraine wants a chance next year to retake some of its territory. We will see whether all of NATO will unite behind that. Right now, we're trying to provide Ukraine with the ability to defend itself. And whatever one article may say, Putin has clearly has said that he wants some additional areas of Ukrainian territory. And of course, when this war all started, he was trying to conquer all of Ukraine.
And Congressman, you're the top Democrat on the Financial Services Subcommittee on Capital Markets. Fed Chair Powell testifies before the full committee today. Treasury Secretary Yellen did yesterday. What are you expecting as far as movement on interest rates?
Well, first keep in mind that we've had some very good economic management over the last 2 years. We've seen the sharpest decline in the inflation rate than at any time this century, and we've been able to maintain that with low, historically low unemployment rates. So I know that the reporting and the polling shows that people are not satisfied with the economy. Economists will tell you that it's a good economy. Obviously, everybody watches Powell every day to get a hint as to whether interest rates will be reduced. He gave a bit of a hint before the Senate yesterday. I will also want to talk to him about a host of banking regulations. We have a system where people can be conned into wiring usually their down payments on a house to the wrong account. And the Fed oversees the wire transfer system that needs to be improved so that it's so that you know to whom you're wiring your money. We're going to want to talk about the Basel III proposal, which appears to have been withdrawn and is being rewritten, which would cause a substantial re-regulation of banks, change those regulations. And I want to make sure that our banking regulations encourage banks to loan money locally to local businesses. Too many of our bank regulations now push banks toward buying billion-dollar bonds on Wall Street, and that means your local business has a hard time getting a loan.
All right, Representative Brad Sherman, a Democrat of California. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.